In a rock shelter in northeast Brazil, beneath a cliff of red sandstone, there are stones that look exactly like tools, chipped, edged, deliberate. Some of them come from layers dated to nearly 50,000 years ago, which is more than 3 times older than the first people are supposed to have reached the Americas. For 40 years, the argument had 2 sides. Either people made those stones, or the cliff did. Then somebody pointed a camera at the valley and found a third answer that nobody had thought to consider. The place is called Boqueirão da Pedra Furada, in the state of Piauí, in the dry thorn country of northeastern Brazil. The region is called Serra da Capivara. It is caatinga, which means semi-arid scrub, cactus, punishing heat, and it sits in one of the poorest parts of the country. The walls there are covered in paintings, thousands of them. Hunters, deer, figures that appear to be dancing, scenes that nobody has fully explained. It is the largest concentration of prehistoric rock art anywhere in the Americas, and not one part of that is disputed by anybody. What is disputed is what lies underneath. The woman who spent her life on that question was named Niède Guidon. She was Brazilian, she trained in Paris, and she died last year at the age of 92, with the argument still open. I want to spend a minute on her, because if you do not know who she was, the claim sounds like something a hobbyist made up, and it very much was not. Guidon first learned about the site from photographs in the early 1960s. She was a young archaeologist, and Brazil at that time was falling under a military dictatorship. She left, she went to France, and she completed her doctorate at the Sorbonne. She came back. In 1973, she finally reached the shelter in person, and she spent essentially the rest of her life there. And in 1986, she and a French colleague published in the journal Nature, arguing from radiocarbon dates that people had been in that shelter around 32,000 years ago. To be clear about what that meant at the time, the rule in the Americas was Clovis. People arrived roughly 13,000 years ago, walking down from the north with a distinctive fluted spear point, and before that nobody. 32,000 years did not adjust that, it obliterated it. Later work at the site pushed the claims further still to nearly 49,000 years, and Guidon herself went further than that, eventually arguing that people may have reached Brazil as much as 100,000 years ago, possibly arriving by boat from Africa. The Africa idea has nothing behind it. Ancient DNA from the earliest Americans points to Asia, consistently, and always has. She was wrong about that. She was not so easily dismissed about the rest, and the fight ran for decades. In 1993, a group of North American archaeologists travelled to Piauí to see it for themselves. That group included David Meltzer, James Adovasio, and Tom Dillehay. And if those names sound familiar, they should, because they are 3 of the most significant figures in exactly this argument. Dillehay excavated Monteverde in Chile and spent decades being told his site could not be as old as it was. Adovasio excavated Meadowcroft Rock Shelter in Pennsylvania and spent 30 years defending it against a contamination charge that nobody ever actually demonstrated. These were men who had personally been on the receiving end of the orthodoxy. They went to Brazil, they looked, and they came away unconvinced. Their objection was not complicated, and it was not stupid. Above the shelter is a cliff of quartzite conglomerate, roughly 100 feet high, and quartzite cobbles are embedded in it. Cobbles fall. They fall a long way, they land on the rocks below, and quartzite fractures conchoidally, which means it breaks in curved, shell-like flakes with sharp edges. That is exactly what a person produces when they strike a stone deliberately. They raised a second problem too. Wildfires are frequent in the Caatinga. Charcoal in a layer does not automatically mean a campfire. Guidon rejected all of it, publicly and with considerable force. And she was not alone. Walter Neves, a bioanthropologist at the University of São Paulo, examined the material at her invitation and said around 2013 that he was 99% convinced the stones had been made by human beings. So that was the shape of it. Falling rocks against human hands. 2 explanations, no resolution, 4 decades. And then in 2016 a paper appeared in Nature that had nothing to do with archaeology at all. It was about monkeys. Serra da Capivara is home to wild-bearded capuchins, and one particular group of them has been studied there for years. The researchers call it the Pedra Furada group because that is where they live. These animals do something that had never been properly documented before. They pick up a quartzite hammerstone in both hands, raise it over their heads and smash it down onto quartzite cobbles embedded in the conglomerate, over and over, and flakes fly off. A team led by Thomas Prophet collected those flakes and analysed them against the standard criteria that archaeologists use to separate a deliberately made stone tool from a naturally broken rock. The monkey flakes met the criteria. My first instinct was that this must mean roughly similar, vaguely tool-shaped, close enough to confuse someone in a hurry. It does not mean that. On the technological and measurable attributes the discipline actually relies on, flakes produced by a capuchin monkey overlap with flakes produced by early members of our own genus, and the reason that lands the way it does is what the monkeys are not doing. They are not making tools. They have never been observed using the flakes for anything at all. They appear to be pulverising the surface of the embedded stone in order to lick it, possibly for silica dust, possibly for lichen. The sharp-edged flakes are litter, a byproduct they walk away from without a backward glance. So the monkeys are not doing archaeology's work, they're doing something completely unrelated and producing the same debris by accident. Hélène Roche, writing a commentary alongside that paper, made the point carefully. This does not throw the African stone tool record into doubt, because those assemblages come with cut-marked animal bones and with the fossils of the people who made them. There is context. But she said it may well require a reanalysis of the enigmatic stones at Pedra Furada, which are next door to the monkeys and have no such context. The capuchin study does not prove the Pedra Furada stones were made by monkeys. Nobody has demonstrated that. Some of the material from the site is more elaborately worked than anything a capuchin has been seen to produce. The rock paintings are certainly not the work of monkeys. Neither are the hearth features, if they are hearths. What the study does is add a third suspect to a room that had only ever held two. And in a case that has always come down to whether a broken stone can be explained without people, adding another way to explain it without people is not a small thing. Niède Guidon died on the 4th of June 2025 at 92. She never conceded. 9 years after the monkey paper, she was still defending the site. And I do not think she was a fool, because look at what has happened to the rest of the field. Clovis First is finished. Monteverde in Chile is accepted, which took Delahaye decades. Footprints at White Sands in New Mexico have been dated by several independent methods to between 21 and 23,000 years old. Everything she said in 1986 about the timeline being far too short turned out to be correct. She was right about the shape of history. She was almost certainly wrong about her number. There is one more thing, and it is the detail that made me want to make this video. Serra da Capivara is a national park and a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it exists largely because Guidon fought for it in a poor region where a protected wilderness was not an obvious priority. She built that park to protect her evidence. The capuchins live inside it. They are studied, filmed and monitored because the land they live on is protected. The park she created to defend her theory is the reason we are able to watch the animals that may end up complicating it. There are more of these arguments out there than anyone has counted. Subscribe and I will keep finding them. Thanks for watching.